Hello, trading has closed on January 3rd, 2024. We always start with our disclaimer. We'll go over our calls and make some predictions. It's my trading plan for Thursday, which is the 4th of January, 2024. All trades should be made at your own risk. I can be dead wrong. Look for the pattern with the early high, which is this. Tomorrow should also have the early high. Here's what we said. We said we had a recovery, which was positive if it could be maintained, but if we gapped down smartly, it'd kill the call, and that was possible because we had a wall into the close. Well, here's your wall with gap pattern, so because we gapped down smartly, there's no call. We said if this were the real thing, we'd go higher, and if it weren't the real thing, we should gap under this low. And that's what happened. Now these wall with gap patterns tend to fill, and usually fill pretty quickly. That would mean at some point we're going to go over that high. I have to admit today's action doesn't inspire any confidence. It'll happen anytime soon, but at some point that thing tends to fill. During the day, MEJT said that this drop wasn't the real thing. We'd retrace, and we did. Well, much of Tom DeMark's indicators have disappointed me at calling tops in the past. Here we have bar 13 of a combo sell and a sequential sell, and they seem to be working. None of this requires us to go down tomorrow, but we should get more downside than this before we're through. It just tells us, regardless of what happens tomorrow, it's unlikely that this decline's over. However, it's also unlikely we're going to collapse, because if there is a collapse, you usually take out the TDST line within 3 bars. I mean, that's 43, 47. I mean, we're nowhere near it. So according to his rule, we're going to drop, but we're not going to collapse. Well, yesterday and today were the dates we had as possible changes in trend, but I don't think that helps us. One is these don't always work. If yesterday's high holds, that was a change in trend. And if we get a recovery today, that's a change in trend. So we'll just have to be alert for a change in trend and see if yesterday's high holds or today's low holds. We have a breakdown, confirmed breakdown from the rising wedge. Here's your RSI breaking down. This has a target around 4,500 cash. That doesn't mean we go down tomorrow, but we have much lower targets. Now, if you look at this blue trend line, we have quite a few hits. We have some hits here, some more hits here, and here's where the trend line ends. So when you drop down to an important trend line like that, my rule is either you gap under that line or the line wins. And gapping under the line, of course, is entirely possible, but if you don't gap under it, I wouldn't trust any break over it. I think it'll retrace. Doesn't mean it can't go further first. This is a pattern which usually closes near the day's high. When it doesn't close near the day's high, it leads to further weakness. If it fails, it usually drops in a straight line. To me, that's a straight line drop. Should lead to more weakness. Doesn't have to lead to a lower close. There are two things about the drop of concern to me. The first is we had this support at 47.0834. We held it and held it and held it. Breaking it in the last 10 minutes is not breaking it with the kind of conviction I would like, because big money isn't behind that break. And also after the break, we recovered over this low. It's not very convincing, but if we just continue lower tomorrow, which would take us under that trend line, all that's forgiven. Now, it's always good when you cross targets off the list. We ended last year with 12 unsatisfied targets from 2023, had only one all of 2022. We crossed one of those targets off the list. Next one's 46, 45, 13 on the downside. Before this drops over, I think we're going to see most of these targets print, and we conceivably could see these in the 4100s print. But that isn't locked in stone at this point. And none of that means we have to drop tomorrow. Thursday's pattern has a really high, regardless of where we open. Today's normally bullish pattern wasn't, unless we gap and promptly overtake the high a day. Should lead to lower prices tomorrow, regardless of how we close. We've dropped to, but not through, an important trend line. If we're to continue lower unabated, we should gap under that line, which is entirely possible. It just hasn't happened yet. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, I can't count this decline as complete. The Nasdaq McClellan oscillator is far, far, far under its lower Bollinger Band. That's something you see at lows. Once we reverse back through it, the indicator gives a buy signal. Today's break under support came too late to be the product of serious money, and the close couldn't take out the prior low. So unless we gap up smartly, it's tough for me to see much positive here, in spite of all these indicators. However, an economic report comes out before the open tomorrow, and if we have a positive response to it, I can justify a rally, even if I know it'll fail eventually. One of my trading rules is the first 1 to 2 days of the year, trading days, tend to go contrary to the rest of the first 5 days. Nothing works every time, but if that works, which doesn't have to, we're going to recover all these losses within 3 days. I have to admit, that looks like a very tall order. A very tall order. But again, nothing works every time. The only way that could possibly work that I can see is if we gap up smartly over these highs. If we gap up smartly over these highs, in the pattern with the early high, I can justify taking this out. I can even justify closing that gap, even though I think it's not going to lead to much. It'll keep dropping later. I think it's a very tall order. I'm not calling for it, but there's an economic report, a jobs report, that I think comes out tomorrow. And I just can't predict what happens to those things. So if the unlikely happens and we gap up here, it could take us quite a bit higher before this decline resumes. If that doesn't happen, and if we gap under this low, which I think is the alternative, we have a ways to go on the downside. And I think we have a ways to go on the downside regardless before the bull market continues. And that's today's call.